This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
How does the power of surprise increase learning in our classroom? Well, a surprising article from Johns Hopkins called "The Element of Surprise Helps Babies Learn Significantly Better" points to a trend that we will talk about in our classrooms of all ages. So if you'll go with me for just a minute as we talk about the babies. Now, if you've played peekaboo with a baby, you know that the surprise is what makes them laugh. Well, researchers found that once a baby saw something that surprised them, their engagement with the object peaked and their learning behavior improved significantly, as exposed to a baby who was not surprised. So they found that babies who were shown surprising events were able to learn faster and more efficiently afterward than those who were not. Yes, we can apply this to our classroom, and today's researcher will help us understand how does the power of surprise improve learning. Episode 774. Today's sponsor is Lumio, an award-winning digital learning tool that will transform your lessons into active, collaborative learning experiences. To learn about Lumio and how to sign up for free, head to lum.io today. And stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more. Dr. Michael Rousell is our guest today as we talk about Power of Surprise, his new book. Now, he has been on the show previously, and we'll link to it in the show notes about the surprising science of life-changing moments. But tell me a little bit about the power of surprise. Why the book, and how did you discover that surprise is so important?
But when I was teaching back in middle school, I used to work with these students. I thought, wow, if they just had a mindset, if they could just find a way to get encouraged, because we knew they've got the aptitude, they've got the ability, but they give up too easily, or they just don't push their way through it. And then they have other students who just have that great mindset, and then they would just go right through it. Start to think the difference between the two is a simple little belief. And of course, Carol Dweck did all her work since then, 25 years later, and says, what that difference is? That's the growth mindset. And I thought it was related to hypnosis. So I actually did my PhD in hypnosis thinking, oh, you know what? What's the best way to change somebody's belief so they believe in themselves? So I actually studied hypnosis and did a lot of hypnosis for about 20 years. I wanted to study what is it about hypnosis? What is it that creates that suggestibility, that moment where you actually believe something that you didn't believe before? And I thought, because when I was doing hypnosis, my friends would ask me, what if you hypnotized somebody and they didn't know it? Or what if you hypnotized somebody and they never came out of it? And I thought, those are two good questions to do a PhD on. So that's what I did my work on. And the name of my dissertation is Hypnotic Conditions in the Classroom.
And so you go through the hypnosis and then you say, okay, well, maybe it's not that. How did you pivot?
Well, you can't just run around hypnotizing students and think that that's going to work. Although I used to hypnotize a lot of students with the parents' permission, and they'd say, "This is great. Get them to take out the garbage too." Yeah, they were fine with that, but they wouldn't take out the garbage. I said, I'm not throwing that in there. I'm studying all these formative events and these moments, study susceptibility. When are people most suggestible? And I found out that they're really suggestible when they have a high emotional arousal, when they're alarmed or when they're confused. But if there's extreme emotional arousal, and that was what I wrote in my first book, how extreme emotional arousal opened up a window of influence. So I did that book about 15 years ago. And so I kept on collecting stories. I have hundreds and hundreds of stories. Some little comment or some little moment changed how they felt about themselves. And so I'm poring over these stories. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I'm poring over these stories, as you do when you do research. Most of those stories were triggered by a surprise. I better study surprise. And so I spent the last 6 years now studying exclusively the neuroscience and the cognitive science of surprise. And lo and behold, surprise. The whole point of surprise is to change your beliefs, right? A surprise is belief-based. If you don't have a belief, you can't be surprised. So, for instance, if you look outside and you see a panda running across your lawn and you think, what? That's going to cause a surprise. if you believe that you live where there aren't any pandas. So that'll cause a surprise.
So we've come through this story and not hypnosis, not suggestibility, surprise. How does the K-12 teacher apply this to their classroom, the principle of surprise?
Let me give you a really good example because I collect a lot of classroom stories. I'd always ask my graduate students, do you have any surprise events in your past? So I'm just going to use Lori as an example. This is a middle school student. Lori used to struggle with learning or test taking. She would go really slowly and she thought that was a sign of low intelligence. So she's writing her test in the library, and as the test is progressing, all her friends get up and they're finished and they're leaving. And she starts to get anxious, right? Oh my God, I'm going so slow that everybody's smarter than me. Struggling. She's anxious. The librarian walks by. She's the only one left writing the test. The librarian walks by and says, wow, kid, your thoroughness and attention is really a sign of grit. People who go slow do the best on tests. And she said, ever since that moment, she goes and she writes her tests slowly, methodically, but now she's got this new mindset, right? Instead of getting anxious, she writes it proudly because it's a sign of grit. And that one little moment, because it was a surprise, changed her mindset.
So we as teachers should look for those moments of truth that could surprise kids and have those conversations. Are you able to surprise kids as a group? Have you turned up any stories about that?
I have stories of surprises as groups. For instance, it's actually a pretty similar story. One student was struggling, going slowly, and was pretty worried. Teacher said to the 6th grade class, as they were kind of making fun of Joey because Joey was going slowly, teacher said to everybody, wow, Joey, keep on going. People who go slowly usually do the best because they're really careful and attentive. And she said after that, the whole class took their time and they never made fun of Joey anymore. And this isn't rocket science for teachers. Teachers, we already know this. Now, the difference is when you say something positive, that's nice and it's encouraging for students. If it surprises them, neurologically as a surprise, what happens is they get what's called phasic dopamine. And with phasic dopamine, basically it's what just happened. That's what they call, that's what they call salience. Like what's happening?
Like, you just blew my mind.
You're right. And so that's what happens. And the reason it happens like that is from our evolutionary past, a surprise usually meant imminent danger or immense opportunity. So you better pay attention. And then the second part of phasic surprise, two-phase, learn instantly. Those who thought about that tiger or the rustle in the bushes, they didn't make it into the gene pool. So we have this predisposition to learn instantly during a surprise. We don't face the tigers anymore, but when the student hears something, what just happened? And then the instant learning, go slowly, confidently.
Teachers, the power of surprise may be just what you need to really reach that student. How can you surprise them with a truth, or surprise them by noticing them, or surprise them in some other way? So Dr. Michael Rousell, and the name of the book is The Power of Surprise. Thank you, Michael. A big thank you to our sponsor, Lumio, for this episode. If you're looking for a collaborative learning tool to make it easy to level up your lesson materials you already have with assessments, game-based activities, collaborative spaces, and lots more, all in one place, Lumio is the perfect choice for you. Head to lum.io for more information and to sign up for free. I'm using this in my classroom, so join me and try Lumio. That's lum.io.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you like this program, you can find more at coolcatteacher.com. If you wish to see more content by Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook and Twitter under Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.